Today I've got a beautiful guest, Josh Roberts. Now, Josh, I met Josh a few weeks ago, a month ago at a conference, and that's another story. But the reason that Josh and I connected is that we've got common ground. We both come from South Africa. So we have that South African flavor, and we see things perhaps a little bit differently. However, I'm going to let Josh take it from here and explain what he does and who he is, and then who knows where the conversation will go from there. Hello, Josh. How are you?
Oh, hello, Carina. Just splendid. Thanks. Living a version of the American dream, even though there's some shady components and some nightmare components, but it's still a dream. What about you?
I know, me too. I live in paradise every single day. I wake up and I think, oh, look at this. I'm so blessed with life, walking. I want to go to the beach today, so I just go to the beach, for example, and the place is clean and it's beautiful and the people are beautiful. I'm in paradise. So after raving, what about you? Tell us a bit about who Josh is.
Oh, that one's a big one right there. That's an onion layer. Let's peel back the layers. I really think in doing that and revealing who we are, what our story is, I do find that we can come to see that we are living in a version of paradise. But I guess the fish doesn't know that it's in the water until it's left the water. Then it realizes, oh, that was water all along.
Yes,
so
and I'm drowning.
Who am I? It quenches the thirst, and too much of it is oversaturating. Yeah, we can drown in that.
Right.
Well, I mean, I think my story is a version of the human story. I think we all have this commonality, and there's these similar archetypes or patterns that emerge through each of them. I mean, I could tell my story in terms of any of the Disney movies, like, okay, well, I'm in a version of Aladdin, I'm in a version of Alice in Wonderland, I'm in a version of Frozen.
Right.
But I guess I'll go with Alice in Wonderland because, firstly, one of my best buddies' great-great-great-grandfather was Lewis Carroll, Charles Dodgson, who wrote Alice in Wonderland.
Oh, no, I didn't know that connection. How cool is that?
How cool is that?
It's super cool.
He didn't inherit any of the money, but still, it's very cool that it runs in that kind of lineage. And I think things happen for a reason. Yes. And so Alice, she was just doing her thing, reading her book. Her sister was trying to kind of program information into her when she fell into a different mode of consciousness. Yes. And that's what happened to me. I think, we don't really have our own decision about what we're going to see reality as we're a kid. We're just imbibing the world that's around us based on the older generation's preconceptions about how these things work.
Yes.
And I was lying under my tree, reading the book, listening, and then I fell into a different mode of consciousness. And they call that bipolar type 1, where the dream realm fused with the waking realm. And I was still kind of under the same tree, but I saw a white rabbit. I saw this little thing that was beckoning me to follow it in a direction. So I ended up falling down that rabbit hole because it's a slippery slope. I just wanted to kind of peek, but it's a slippery slope.
Yes.
And I fell down into this place within my mind, a wonderland, a confusing place where up is down and down is up. But yet I discovered a level of enchantment to reality that I really believe is there. And after crawling my way out, I still get glimpses of the Mad Hatter every now and again. And I actually think that this world is infused with those kinds of things, but I couldn't know it unless I moved away from the water, unless I was the fish outside of the water. So, growing up in South Africa, we're an eclectic country anyway. We've got 11 official languages, and we do imbibe a bunch of different cultures, which is awesome to just be exposed to those. And then I exposed myself to them by traveling after high school. When I was 17, I just basically left home and wanted to see what was on this round spherical mass of a planet of ours. And so by piecing together a bunch of these different cultures, these different ways of seeing reality, and fusing that realm of the dreams of inspiration into my waking reality, now I really believe I'm getting to live like a version of the dream. I'm not loaded and I don't even have a white picket fence or whatever, but there's an intelligence behind reality that is guiding me step by step. So now I work in the mental health field and help to facilitate this metamorphosis within other people. And so I work for like the National Alliance on Mental Illness, NAMI, San Diego, Imperial Counties, for Interfaith, for Wings Recovery in Carlsbad. And then my wife and I started our own company, Inspired Mind Mental Health, in this year. And it's really beautiful how this larger thing tends to take over and work through us. And it led me to you, and, paths intersect. Yes, not every day you meet another South African. So I think there's a reason for that too.
Yes. I love that, because a lot of the times we speak about this on this podcast all the time, the synchronicities of events. I mean, I don't believe in coincidence. There's no coincidence, right? And you are here as an instrument, really, because a lot of times things just move. You just moved, and you get these downloads. For the want of a better word, I know that's has a lot of loaded meaning, but sometimes, and a lot of times in the podcasts as well, and when I do my coaching, it's you just go into another reality. So I know exactly what you mean, and you're taken to another reality, and your words come out exactly what whoever needs to hear it at that moment needs to hear it. Okay, that sounded really confusing, but I understand exactly where you're at. I love this mental illness that you're working with, because especially now you find that there's a shortage and there's such a need for it. And I love the way you got into it, because I can relate to that as well. Where fantasy, reality, it's still like what is what, and you can create your own. So on that note, tell me a bit about what you're doing right now that you're working with mental health. What are you doing exactly?
Yeah, awesome. Thanks. And everything you said is super profound, and I resonate with all of it. And I use the word download too, because it's just kind of a modern way of understanding this different understanding of consciousness that can come in a flash. It's not like a slow progression.
Yes.
Yeah, having received aspects of that download, but it was very confusing, and I messed it up a lot of times. This is the thing, it's like we're not taught in school, like, I don't know, at age 13, what happens when you fall into psychosis? How do you navigate the metaphysical intersection with this mutual consensus reality? There's none of that 101. And so I had to figure it out myself, which was a path of falling forward, making mistakes. What is walking? It's just falling forward. It's a series of coordinated falls, but you do actually move in a direction. So what I was able to do, both with my travels, just with the South African way of thinking, and then I studied this stuff, got my bachelor's in psychology and my master's in theology, the study of God.
Wow, I love
and
that.
I was able to, fusing the worlds of psyche and spirit. I believe they're two sides of the same coin.
Yes.
And so what I did was, I went to seminary up in LA and Pasadena, and after this experience, I wrote all of my papers on this kind of stuff. So what I assembled is this, I believe, a pretty well-rounded perspective on different ways of seeing mental health conditions. And I call it neurodiversity gifts, that within being wired slightly differently, there's vibrant opportunity to tap into these different realms of imagination, of inspiration, and the collective as well. So what I do is, with my company, I do three things. I facilitate neurodiversity gifts workshops. It's like a 12-hour workshop where we all get together and we explore things like science and frequencies, Carl Jung and depth psychology, his neurodiversity. We look at the South African Sangomas, the shamanistic understanding of these states of consciousness, and the Filipino Babaylans. We learn from the spiritual masters how they had to navigate these states of consciousness too, as well as Greek philosophy, Plato's cave allegory, Icarus,
I love
and the wounded healer Chiron.
Yes.
And then we cruise back towards the West on this kind of hero's journey, and we learn from the modern models like the Institute of Noetic Sciences and Dr. Suzanne Brown's work. And we explore dreams and the intersection of dreams and so-called psychosis, and how, hey, like if you wake up in a dream, it's called lucid dreaming, suddenly you can control aspects that you never could before. Suddenly you realize there's a fluidity to reality. If you wake up within reality, within your waking reality, and realize it has aspects of being a lucid dream too, you can be able to play with it and dance with it in ways that you weren't able before. So that's kind of the goals of those workshops that we facilitate. Then we also do like cultural competency trainings for mental health professionals to try to show them that when these people come into, your therapy office, it's not that they're completely broken and you have all the answers to try to fix them. It's actually exactly what you were talking about, Carina, about there's something larger that emerges where you say just the right thing at the right time. If you realize you're in this dance, if you're facilitating a liminal space where something larger than either of you can emerge.
Yes.
And so we're trying to affect the system in that way. And then the third thing is we run a existential peer support specialist program where we come alongside people who are having these mental health struggles and just help them connect to meaning and purpose and community, these things that are so lacking in the West. And so that's kind of like what we do with Inspired Mind Mental Health, but then with NAMI and with Interfaith and with these other agencies, I also incorporate this understanding, but in more of a conventional psychological framework. It's epic. I love it.
Yes, it's beautiful, and that's so important because we need that. You don't realize that that's lacking in the West. I work, showers of blessings, and I work with the homeless, and it always makes me so sad when they say, okay, take the people out and we'll give them a hotel voucher or find them a place to stay, which is fine, but it's total isolation. So you take the people off the streets where they have a bit of community, because they have to have community to survive, right? And then put them into a hotel, and no, they aren't allowed nobody's allowed to visit them or whatever, and then they wonder why they relapse or they go back into the street. So I'm loving that you've got this holistic approach, and that people, and that's something that we need to instill in people and make them realize that people are social beings. You need that contact, you need that humanity, you need those hugs, you need that. And even though you work a lot on yourself, you still can't live in isolation. I mean, we'll go back to COVID, right? We don't even want to go, like we're seeing the results of that isolation now with kids and teenagers and everybody. So I really love that. And I love the way you see the world in all that glory, because at the end of the day, it is that. We are just here as instruments. And when we realize that, and we realize the miracles, that's when you can become much bigger than you. Like, you are huge, Josh.
Yeah.
Right. Right.
Yep, Alice expands. He just chose the right side of the mushroom. But it's so like that. Einstein said there's only two ways of viewing the world: as if nothing is a miracle, or as if everything is a miracle.
Yes.
And it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. When you see everything as a miracle, you're filled with the miraculous. And that brings you energy, which brings more miracles. Yeah, I love that, Carina. And also how you were saying about us being social beings. That's just so true. And it is something we've lost sight of a little bit in the West. We think we need to kind of put these band-aids over the surface needs, and maybe that's biological needs or even housing needs. But what's really happening is we're disconnecting ourselves from the lifeblood of the tree with the roots and all of its grounding. And so that's in South Africa. We have that expression, Ubuntu. I am who I am through other people. We're all just mirrors. And that's how we even formulate our own self-identity, is through others. So when you pluck people out of community, they get lost in who they are, what their meaning and purpose is. And then also just biologically, they've actually done studies that social connection has as much impact on physical health as things like blood pressure and smoking. So your social connection is really good for your health. Mind and matter are two sides of the same coin. Yes. I think you're spot on that these are just kind of Band-Aid treatments, and they're not really addressing the underlying cause. But conversations like this can start to move in that direction.
Yes. I always feel so sad when I see those Band-Aids. Like when you have someone who's having who's in addiction, or an addict, for example, and they will go through whatever they go through, and then come out of the recovery and then put back into the situation that caused the recovery in the first place. And that's just, again, not looking at the whole situation for what it is and finding the root cause of the problem. It's so easy to just put a Band-Aid on it and say, okay, well, I've done what I can do, let me move on. So I'm really loving that. So what brought you then to the States?
Well, my dad was American, so like I always had it in the back of my mind that America is where I need to be. My mom and dad separated when I was 3, but since he was born here, I had an American passport. So I was like, okay,
Nice.
cool, that's going to come in
Nice.
handy. So then we did live in America for a year. When I was 11, we lived in Florida, and I had a little taste of it. And then at 17, when I left home, I went and traveled around, but I went to the UK, I went to England, Ireland, Scotland, and Wales, and worked in those places to build up pounds. I was aiming to come and stay with my dad afterwards, but then unfortunately he ended up taking his own life due to untreated bipolar and the substance abuse, which go together. So it's like, oh, dude. So then I put off the America thing for a little while. I just kind of cruised around and explored things a little bit more. I did end up coming to work at Six Flags in Chicago, to work in the theme park as a lifeguard. And that was my first little taste of actually living in America. I was like, this is it, this is America. But it rained almost every day. It was freezing cold. It was winter. And I was like, okay, this is not going to cut it. I'm a surfer. So then I cruised over to the East Coast and lived in spots up and down there. And I was like, it's okay, but it's not exactly the paradise I was hoping for. But then in 2011, I moved to San Diego for the first time, and this spot right here, this was more than I was hoping for.
Yes.
Like honestly, it just exceeded all my expectations. So like I don't think it's perfect in every way. I think that just like people are mirrors and they need other people to supplement their blind spots, California is like that too. And so my ideal setup would be to have a spot in San Diego where we live with my wife and kids for say 6 months out of the year, then have a spot in South Africa where we live for 3 months, one in Europe that we live for 1 month, and then one in Hawaii that we live for 2 months. And slowly but surely, I think that this is a possibility to assemble. But that's my ideal right there.
That's perfect. Yes. Yes. I love that, because it's paradise here, but you need to go out and explore different areas, and because there's so much to see just in California on its own. And again, the mirrors thing, it's very easy to isolate, right? Especially now behind your computer with online work and all that. But you don't realize that you do the internal work. You work within yourself, but you never know if you've done the work until you go out and you see the mirrors and you see how you react towards them or how they trigger you. So I love that a lot. Just tell me a bit about fear. In all this, I mean, it's been beautiful. You've traveled here, you've traveled there, you've had this experience, and now you're in San Diego. I mean, San Diego's beautiful, right? In all this, what did you ever experience fear, as in like fear that keeps you stuck and just like hiding away in a corner? Or have you just been like, oh, life is cool, I'm cool?
Yeah, well, I think a little bit of both. It's such an awesome point about fear and bringing it up. And I think fear is such a powerful force. And so I think in general, we inherit these ideas and understandings about the world, which can lead to fear in some sort of capacities. And so, yeah, I think it's a journey that we all have. We walk with this thing called fear, or it's like, even in dreams, you could be being chased by this monster and you could spend ages in a dream running away from this monster until you turn around and look at it and say, okay, what's up? Like, what are you? And do you need something? Can I help you? Can I lend you some cash? Or what is it that you need?
Shine a light, right?
Shine a light. That's what sets the shadows free. Yeah, no, I agree. So I think that we run a lot from this thing called fear, and I did for the first while. I didn't know there was any alternative until I, in a way, had to come face to face with it. And plus, I realized that this is kind of like a lucid dream. And in a lucid dream, you can turn around and face fear, and it can morph into something else, like a little kid or whatever. So growing up, I suppose when my mom and dad separated at 3, this kind of fear came on me, and it had palpable physical effects, and I developed asthma, like these kind of psychosomatic conditions because of it, this fear of uncertainty and how things are going to go. And then as we were moving around, I did go to a bunch of different schools growing up, kind of enjoyed it. I didn't have too much fear. It was really the teenage phase where you become super self-conscious, and then you become fearful about what other people are thinking. You feel so separate from the world. And so then it's like, okay, well, I'm scared that I'm going to get rejected. I'm scared that I'm going to say the wrong thing. I'm scared that I'm going to, all all of these kinds of social fears crept in. And then, you kind of come through that and let some of that go. And then when I started traveling by myself, there was the fear about, I might just die on the street. Who knows what's going to happen? I didn't have a whole bunch of cash. Like, I rocked up in London the first time with like the equivalent of $100. That went really quick. And I couldn't get back to the place that I was staying. So me and my buddy had to sleep on the streets in Piccadilly Circle right there in Circus, just on these cardboard boxes. And you never know, okay, am I going to survive? How's this all going to work out?
Yes.
And that happened often. Like, I would quit my job because I just felt called to quit, and then I was just running out of money, and then something miraculously would come through.
Yes.
Or, my car would get smashed. It got broken to pieces on my 21st birthday because the Irish didn't like the English, and it had an English license plate, and that was my first day of a job. And it's like, oh, are things going to fall to pieces? And always they have a way of working themselves out.
Yes.
And so time and time again, after these kinds of things happening, fear became less of a bogeyman. And I'm like, oh, okay, fear, what's up? I know that actually something larger is going to emerge and it's going to resolve you if I just have, I guess, faith. What is faith? It's just belief that there's something larger that's unseen, that you can't see right in front of you. And so my faith really started to increase at that point, that no, there's an intelligence that kind of has our backs, which is beautiful. And yeah, it'll expose you to gnarly things, but that's the gym. You're being exposed to the breakdown of muscles so that they can get stronger again.
Yes.
So that was the kind of experiential aspects of just normal fear in daily life. But I had a whole different type of fear when I fell into the subconscious depths of my own mind. Initially, bipolar mania was euphoric. It was like the most exhilarating experience of my life. But then when society didn't like it very much that I was in those states of consciousness, and really I was doing some dangerous things like jumping from white line to white line in the middle of moving traffic, and I thought I could fly. So you don't want to be doing this kind of stuff in California. Yeah. So then they put me in a psychiatric hospital, and when I came out, they pumped me full of heavy antipsychotic medication, and that sent me into a 7-month deep existential clinical depression. And that was very scary. That was probably the scariest that my life has ever been, even though I've been in a lot of physical danger before. I mean, we have the highest concentration of great white sharks in the world, and in South Africa, and I was in the water when a 16-year-old kid got his leg bitten off. But that wasn't as scary as when all the meaning and purpose evaporated from my life in this clinical depression. And they were telling me it's a permanent disability. Sorry, man. You just have to adjust to this new normal. You may want to lower your expectations about what you could do. That was debilitating. And then it became a self-fulfilling prophecy too. Oh, maybe I can't do all these things. And then I ended up having to quit my job and drop out of all my classes at school and all these things. And I was just very scared that the light would never come back. And so there again, I made this little background for you because we're talking about fear. And I believe that when we have a perspective on what reality is, it can dissipate this layer of film that's on the surface, the white right there.
Yes.
And when we can clean that off, we see, no, we actually are in a version of paradise. And that helps to put even the white into perspective. When I was so blinded by this dirty mirror, I mean, the Bible says, for now we see through a glass darkly. It's kind of blurry, but eventually we're going to see in full. And when we have that kind of vision, it puts everything else into context. But that vision evaporated in my clinical depression. Eventually, I did end up getting it back. That involved medication changes, lifestyle changes. I moved from LA to San Diego, got a job with NAMI. All these kind of different pieces fell into place. And that glimmer of light started coming back. And I was like, oh, that was just another one of those situations that did end up resolving itself. But you can be so paralyzed by the uncertainty within the moment that you think, well, this time's different. This time's not going to work out.
Yes.
So now what keeps me kind of fear-free, and I really do feel like a sense of authenticity and blessing and freedom that I can just be myself, is the recognition that there's a higher dimension behind all of this, and that this dimension, this intelligence, has our back and is loving and is benevolent. And like, I'm not trying to say that gnarly things don't happen or it's all an illusion or anything, because it's very real pain as well. And I just happen to be blessed that everything's going well right now. But I do believe that even through our tragedy, there is that glimmer of a higher dimensional reality which can give hope in the midst of all this blinding mist. And so that's what I think can liberate us from fear, is a greater truth. C.S. Lewis, the theologian, he was an atheist turned theologian, he said, well, what happens when we die is that all the sad things will become untrue. All the things that we saw, they'll just unravel themselves, and they were untrue all along. And so I think that glimmer of hope can be really, really powerful.
Yes, I love it. For me, I always say that whatever happens is a blessing in everything that happens in your life, right? And if you look back, when you're in it, sometimes it's like, how am I going to get out of this? I'm never going to get out of this, but you always do. And it always comes out better. And if you look back, it's like, whoa, my life just, it was such a blessing, because I wouldn't be here to tell the tale. I wouldn't be here having this conversation with you or meeting up with you. And that makes it so beautiful. But it's, again, the faith. I mean, how do you keep that faith? How do you keep that faith? How do you know that, there's a knowing that you're on the right path and you know where to go? And how do you hear that voice that sometimes your head just makes you go insane? Like, my head sometimes creates such stories. That's why I'm an author, because it's like, whoa, where does that come from? So how do you do that, Josh? How do you keep that faith? How do you know when, I know this is two questions, but how do you know that it's your faith and you're going in the right path, as opposed to your brain that's saying, you must go this way or that way or the other?
Yeah, one awesome question. I'd love to hear your perspective too, because I think actually the way that we map out this terrain is together. Yes. And we can see things from different angles. Yeah, I'd love to hear how you're in the right direction. But for me, and lately, I just seem really kind of in the flow. I feel like I'm connected with this frequency that is very clear and sending me in all these very clear directions. There's definitely seasons where that's not there. Yes. And I'm always trying to have it turned up. I don't know if I'm going to be able to sustain this. Probably not, unfortunately. But I do think, for one, there's ebbs and flows, just like there is of tide and just like there is of seasons. And sometimes our lives are filled with this clear direction, this meaning, this purpose, this discernment. And then there's other times where I think intentionally that clearness kind of evaporates a little bit, and maybe we're called to refer back to our previous experience. As you've said, like how everything does tend to work out. We're called to fall back on the wisdom communities, the traditions who came before us, the masters who've navigated these things, and to, in a way, have more faith. Those are the chances when you have a chance to really expand your faith, because it's easy to believe when everything's just lining up. Yes. So firstly, I think there's ebbs and flows. And I think that within the high tides, where there's just an abundance of meaning and purpose, for me, it takes the form of synchronicities. You were saying earlier that you don't think anything is a coincidence. Neither do I. Like, the intelligence that created all of this is infinitely detailed. Yes. Like, everything's got a reason. The reason that leaves are shaped like that is to maximize photosynthesis, exposure to the sun, and nothing's by accident. And so I don't think the things that happen in our life are by accident either. And so when there's an alignment of mind and matter, synchronicity. So this was come up with by Carl Jung, who was neurodiverse himself, who had an experience of psychosis where he had to navigate the boundary dissolution between the inner and the outer world. And he ended up coming up with a theory, the unus mundus, which means the one world, that actually mind and matter are two sides of the same coin. They're actually the same thing. And that when an archetype arises in one, it's arising in the other. And this recognition of a similarity occurring in your mind and then it popping up in the universe. So, for instance, you're just thinking about this buddy, or you just had a dream about this buddy, and then they end up calling you the next day. Well, that was weird. Or you're just thinking about South Africa, or you have this kind of homesickness and you're walking across the street and you bump into Carina. And you have those kinds of things are little breadcrumbs, I believe, that there is an alignment of mind and matter. And I think those are little pathways to explore. I think all of this is less of an answer to solve, and it's more of a riddle that has layer upon layer. And that's the joy of it. It's like movies are like that. We want to have all these plot twists. We want to not quite know what's going to happen.
Yes.
And so I think this is a story. As an author, you know, stories, and we're beings that stories can just flow through. And so I think in times of abundance of meaning, those synchronicities can help to be the breadcrumb trails that lead us towards meaning and purpose. And then in the times when there aren't that abundance, I fall back on the mystics, reading the material of the mystics, and it can help to remind me of all of that. And I'll fall back on the community mirrors and the inspiration that I can draw from other people. And just on the tried and tested doctrine that's been proven over the centuries and millennia to be true, then I still hold on to that. It's not an easy time, but probably that's when we grow the most.
Yes.
So what about you? How do you know you're on the right path, and how do you navigate these things?
I resonate a lot. I agree a lot with what you're saying. For me, it's also about messages. So silly things, you know, you'll walk, because I walk a lot. It's so easy to walk in San Diego, right? You can just walk wherever because it's so safe. But I'll walk and I'll have something in my head, like I'll be thinking about something and I'll think, oh, I wonder, or whatever. And then the next minute I'll hear a song, or I'll see the cloud. I love cloud formations. And I mean, it's like really random, yes, but there's messages, like the divine just gives us messages constantly in the clouds, right? So I'll see a shape of something, and then it'll make sense to me, right? But a lot of times, a meditation helps me a lot as well. So I'll do walking meditations, or I'll meditate, because sometimes I just don't know where I'm at, because my mind is just like all over the place. So I have to reel it in. It's always reeling it in, right? Because it's just so crazy. Yes, and then just reading it. If you just read, or you read the philosophers, and you go back. But I think one of the most important things for me as well is the mirrors. Going out and mirror and people, because I have mirrors all the time. There's mirrors wherever I go, and those are also answering the questions that are in my head, that I'm creating anyway. And it's also quite interesting for me how, you know, you have that creation. So as I think things, suddenly they just manifest. It's like, whoa, you know, that feeling as well. So it's really beautiful, but sometimes it's scary. So sometimes it's very easy to get caught up in that crazy fear, that like limbic system kind of crazy stuff. And then you have to stop yourself and say, hey, what you doing? Like chill, or just take a breath, or love yourself, do the self-love, self-worth thing, because that's big for me as well. I realized, I don't know, that the self-abuse was horrible. You know, until you learn that self-love works better than the self-abuse. You know, your life is just so much better when you start loving yourself. And the people that come into your life also are beautiful. I mean, I don't think we would have met maybe 3 years ago, or whenever, or 4, or this is my 6th year, to my anniversary month, right? Or 6 years ago when I first arrived here. Too many changes. So that's exciting too. It's the constant growth.
Yeah, that's what it is. Yeah, when you see it as that adventure, then every day it's like, okay, cool, what's in store for me today?
Yes.
And like you say, when you see the world as a mirror, which I think it is, they say we don't see the world as it is. We see the world as we are.
Yes.
And that's probably literally the case. Like we're actually seeing we're all this one kind of being exploring itself, seeing itself from these different angles. And I think you're so right in that calming down that overthinking mind and the limbic system, that fight or flight response, can allow that unity to appear. When then we're looking for the guidance from the mirrors, not from always the left brain analytical side. But we weren't taught that in school at all. And so we do have to unlearn a bunch of things. And I mean, even if we believe in evolution, we have to unlearn our biology, because that limbic system was really handy when we were running up against the proverbial saber-toothed tiger. It got us out of there. But we're just not in that environment anymore. And so we're outdating the kind of mechanism, we're outdating the machine. And so now we can, it's, you know, the mind isn't an epiphenomenon that just emerges from the brain. The mind actually works back onto the brain to make chemical and structural changes.
Yes.
So we can engage that part of the mind that can then direct and calm down that limbic system to say, thanks, intelligence, you were trying to keep me safe. And now let's go in this direction. Yes. And I think that will unfold the next level of what humanity is trying to become, which I think is just around the corner. It's really an exciting time to be alive.
Yes, I agree with you. It's very exciting with the internet and with just everything. There's just so many things happening, and with epigenetics and neurogenesis and all these things. It's like, whoa, this is an amazing time to be alive. So I love that. That's really exciting. I wanted to ask you about freedom. We have been speaking a lot about freedom anyway, but tell me a bit about freedom, as in, because you've explained that, and most of what you've been saying has been about freedom, especially getting free from the drugs and all that, and managing yourself from the medical drugs. What does freedom look like for you, for Josh now?
Freedom looks like very chill with you, with open-minded people, and have these kinds of chats just because I want to. I think that the opposite of fear in a way is freedom, and that what sets us free is the truth. Yes. And the truth sets us free. Just, oh, that's what's going on. And there's actually a real liberation that comes with knowing what's really going on. Not that I've got it figured out, of course, but as I'm open to the truth, more and more it's revealing how cool things really are. Mm-hmm. So freedom for me, you mentioned the drugs. Yeah, I mean, both the psychiatric drugs, and it was weed. It was marijuana that triggered my initial psychosis in the first place. Yes. And I've had addiction issues since then, and like still it's something that's kind of in the back burner, but I'm getting a lot of freedom from that too. And that's because I think that we're craving meaning and purpose. And when we can't find it in our reductionist materialist society, we can turn to these substances which give you these glimmers of magic. Yes. And which give you that peace and that relaxation and that authenticity. And so I think that those were just means to an end, but they're like fish hooks that are actually, it's a hook. It's nice and shiny on the surface and it glimmers, but when you bite it, you're latched on. Yes, and so the way that I've been able to give myself freedom from that is finding the meaning and purpose within mutual consensus reality, within shared reality. Mm-hmm. So for instance, the weed, psychedelics, I mean, weed for me would do what psilocybin, LSD, even DMT would do to other people, just because I gravitate on the neurodiverse level already. Yes. And so I think those layers of meaning and all those kind of enchanted aspects of reality, I'm finding them in sober reality. The difference is I can actually do something about them here. I can transform things for myself and my family. So I'm more invested in that. Yes. Then in terms of things like alcohol, which give you that euphoria, like everything's cool. Well, I think discovering that actually everything is cool. And a lot of the stress that's just put on us is societally imposed, or it's imposed by our paradigms, our way of seeing the world. Yes. We don't actually have to do much. Like we can unsubscribe from all of those conventional narratives. Yeah, we're maybe not going to have all the perks or whatever, but there's also going to be a liberty. So and things do come along, of course, like real scary things like illnesses and death and catastrophes and those kind of things do happen. But still, I think that it's the higher dimensional truth that's allowed to set me free. And I found that the more that I become myself, which is that, I mean, we're born ourselves, then we gravitate away from ourselves, and then we end up coming back to ourselves with a newfound kind of dynamic. And the more that I can be myself, the more I align with how things were created to be. And so things tend to flow in our direction more. Yes. So that's how I found it. What about you? Yes. I love that. Because I found like being a good Italian, because I'm Italian, right? Catholic girl, living in South Africa. I realized how many false beliefs I had, and that they were like shaping my world. And as I look at them and I can release them, on whatever level, or shift them or whatever it is,
I realize that I do find freedom, and as I can have the courage to be myself and vocalize, like here, just say what I have to say without judging myself, which was a huge thing for me. As I was growing up, I kept judging myself. I was never good enough. I was never good enough. I was never pretty enough. I was never intelligent enough. I was never anything enough. And as a result, I also just withdrew and became isolated and shy and awkward. So now having to look at that and say, you know what, it doesn't matter. This is who I am. And you know what? Some people will like me. Some people will hate me. And you know what? It's okay. There's how many billions of people in the world? Not everyone can like me. And that is freedom. And to be able to say, well, you know what? You're not so bad after all, right? You're pretty intelligent. You've got this, you've got this, you've got this. And you can start looking at yourself with self-worth. And that's been freedom for me as well. And actually, yes, just going out and speaking your truth. It is about truth. But that also takes courage.
Yeah, it does. I mean, that's beautiful what you said, and I think you're epic. And I think that's absolutely true in that it can become a self-fulfilling prophecy. When we're worried that we're not keeping up to some sort of standard, it makes us withdraw into our shells, and then we actually don't keep up with that standard.
Yes.
Because if we're in that fight or flight mode and there's just cortisol, the stress hormone pumping through our body, we're not functioning optimally. And yet, but this is what we're kind of raised to do. And we're put in classrooms where you're competing with all the students. Where do you place in the class? You're competing with the grade level, and you're always having to compare.
Yes.
I think and fair enough, maybe they were trying to do their best, but I think we can do that differently now, to say that everyone's made different for a reason. And exactly like you said, everyone doesn't have to like us, like no matter what. I mean, what president of the United States was ever liked by 100% of the population? I doubt that there even was one.
Yes.
I mean, the most powerful person who was elected officially is disliked by sometimes half of the population. It's like, it's just the way that things roll. And so on the counter side, when you become okay with who you are and you soften those boundaries and you do have the courage to step out, that too becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yes.
And then you're other people who are like you and they're attracted to the actual real you will gravitate towards you. It's better to have like one or two of those kind of friends than 100 ones who like you for the fake mask that you're wearing.
Yes.
And so I think that's the way. Yes. And you're so right that it does take courage. Sometimes we're actually pushed into it. Sometimes we can choose the courage, but sometimes, for instance, me, the whole ladder that I was climbing completely crumbled and the wall crumbled, and I just couldn't keep up this perfect reputation. So I was like, all right, forget it. Well, now it's crumbled. What do? Might as well start fresh. What's the best way to be fresh is to just relax all the boundaries, be completely truthful and free and authentic, and that too becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. Yes, I think it's a powerful dynamic that you're exploring there.
Yes, it's beautiful. And then you also realize that there is no competition. Like you've been taught that there's competition, but there cannot be competition. I mean, I'm not like you. Even though we're chatting, we all are unique in our own ways, and we all have our own gifts, and we all bring different things to them. I mean, there's millions of podcasts, like billions probably, who knows how many podcasts there are. And everyone has their own flavor. I mean, I'd love to be like, I don't know, Joe Rogan, but I could never be Joe Rogan, because Joe Rogan has his own way of doing things and I have my own. And that's the beauty as well here. Like there is no competition, and that also relaxes everything, and then you can show your creativity and you can come out and be your truth. So I love that, Josh. It's really
cool, really liberating, and it's so cool that this is what your podcast is about. I think that's fantastic because the world needs more of that. And maybe it's just outdated, or maybe it was just that we were still functioning in a reductionist, materialist, industrial age education system where it was kind of make everyone the same or specialize for a certain role so that you can play this cog within the machine. But it's different now. It's the information age, and we recognize that there is a variety of colors, and we can be those colors. I suppose the question comes, you've got to make the money, you've got to be able to pay your ends and these kinds of things. And will that money and that income flow if we just drop all the conventional ways of doing it? if we're not trying to copy the ones who are already making the money. Then there's just a bunch of imitators.
Yes.
What would happen if we were just completely free in ourselves? Well, I mean, Jesus said, don't worry about tomorrow. Tomorrow's going to worry about itself. You just worry about today. And he said, sell all your stuff and give it to the poor and watch how the universe bends and shifts and morphs to provide for your needs. So like, I don't see hardly anyone in the Christian church doing that. And yet this is what these spiritual masters are advocating for, that there's radical freedom and provision in letting go of these things, because it's like how they catch monkeys, as they put like nuts in a hole that is big enough to get the open hand in, but once they grab the nuts, they can't get the closed hand out. And so now the monkey's trapped by its own clinging. And sometimes when we let go of that, that's how freedom comes. It's by letting go of even the egoic constructs, all these claims of materialism and these kind of things that we're clinging to. They're holding us captive. And when we realize that and we let them free, we ironically get the things that we were hoping for anyway. Seek first the kingdom of God, and all these things like cash and opportunity and stuff will be added to you as well. But you've got to order your priorities right. Otherwise, you don't get any of it.
Yes. And that's freedom. For me, I'm a minimalist. So I have like the least thing ever. And it's always about that. It's about letting go. But there's always something that you just think, I can't let that go, because if I do, it'll be the end of the world. And you've got to like work on that. Now, why are you thinking those things? What's going on? Like, who is that person that's clinging on and that's so afraid? So there's always work to be done. And again, the mirrors, because you do find, I found when I let it go, someone said, I don't know who it was, so that whatever, I think it was Rumi, it doesn't matter. Whatever you seek is seeking you, right? Whatever you seek is seeking you. Yes, I think it was that. And then again, like whatever's meant for you will be yours anyway. So just let it go and set it free. And if it's yours, it'll come back and you'll be happy. But if you hold on to it, it just gets smelly and rotten because it's ugly. But those are also, again, mental constructs. You have to bring them down to your heart.
And then put them into practice, which is so hard to do.
Practice,
yeah.
Yes.
It's like, does it work? Does it actually work? Well, I'm not saying I've done that. I certainly haven't. And I've got a wife and 2 little kids to support, so I still do pay the rent to do all this stuff. But I guess it comes down to, do we really believe it? Do we believe this is the way the world operates? If you do, it's an easy let go.
Yes.
And then you do it, and then watch what happens. I would love to say that I'm courageous enough to do that. I guess I'm not. It's like you say, why is there still that part of you that's clinging? And I think it is that fear. And and the fear is based on love. Like maybe fear is just the other side of love. Switchfoot sings a song that says, well, love is just a reflection of the things that matter most, or fear is just a reflection of the things that matter most. When we value this thing so much, we don't want to trust that thing to like paradigms we don't understand. We want to do our best to keep it. And so maybe behind it is this love, but it's just misdirected. Maybe we don't think that we can trust God. We don't think we can trust the universe. And like I say, I guess I don't either, because otherwise I wouldn't be paying all the bills. Well, no, you'd have to be irresponsible too. I don't know what that society would look like, but I think it would be an awesome conversation to have. And like when you were talking about the homeless population and how they do build a community, like some of my good friends are in that community, and I myself spent some time there, and they have a different understanding about people, a different understanding about time, different understandings about opportunity, synchronicity, these things that come along. My brother and I were going to start a YouTube channel where we just interview people who are homeless and learn their metaphysical and spiritual wisdom, because I think they also have an important piece to add to this conversation. They unsubscribed from conventional society.
Yes.
Hey, how did that go? Like, how did it all work out? Definitely, it's hard to untangle from some of these other past pains and the addiction, which are trying to maybe fuel the pain that was caused earlier. But still, I think there would be something to discern. And I don't think we have to keep living this way of life. And I don't think we will. I think in like a century or two, it'll be very, very different. And that there'll be much more liberty because we have all the technology that it can all work for us. Like, why are we still working more than ever when everything can be automated? What is money that they've got us like chasing our tails for this thing? It's just a mutual consensus. We just agree that it has value. So I think the seeds are set for big societal change. And I'm hoping that I get to live into that and be a part of that.
Yes. And we can see it already with like cryptocurrency and NFTs. And that's so exciting. I mean, a lot of people go, hey, sorry, I don't want that because it's scary. But if you can embrace it and you can see the opportunity and just play with it, it's very exciting. And that's what I enjoy. And again, going back with letting go, it's about faith and trust. And that's something that I work on constantly every day, because it is easy to have faith and trust when you're in a good place. Like, oh, life is awesome now. But as soon as something comes up, and there's going to be blessings out of it, I'm not saying, but still there's that face of fear. And then you think, I have to hold on because, I don't know, I have to have control. And that's also letting go of control. How difficult is that? Again, faith and trust.
Yeah, it is faith and trust, and it is difficult to let go. But our ego, whoever I am, I'm not very good at running my own life, let alone the world. Like, so having faith and trust in myself is probably not the best idea. Now, it's not like all that this is completely spiritual. Like, faith can be a very sort of secular thing. We all have faith in something.
Yes.
And like, I have faith in this technology. I have faith that actually you're a real person, and I'm not just talking to like a simulation. Everything, our whole cognitive structure is based on faith. We can't process every single piece of information. We're bombarded by 11 million bits of stimuli every second, and our conscious brain can only handle 50 of them. So that means we're filtering out the vast majority of reality. Now, what we choose to filter out is basically faith. We believe that these are the important facts, and all of that is not. So everyone has this kind of lens that they're looking through. If you just move that to a different place, your reality will literally shift. Now you're filtering out these things. So yeah, I don't mean that the whole thing is completely spiritual. I actually believe that everything is spiritual and science is spiritual. So I think it can appeal to people who wouldn't identify as religious or spiritual as well. It's just our way of seeing the world. It's just our lenses that we look through.
Perception's everything.
That's right. Yeah.
Wow, this is a beautiful conversation. Tell me, so if someone wants to get hold of you, do some of your beautiful workshops. In fact, I'm thinking, this could be a lot of fun for me to do myself. Anyway, where would they get hold of you, Josh?
They can find me on this big interconnected interweb thing that we have. I live just at my website, just waiting for people to rock up. I've got little cups of tea. They can find me.
That sounds so cool.
Yeah, it's virtual tea. Okay, it doesn't taste like anything. But again, perception is everything. So if you believe it does, just like in the movie Hook, suddenly you're having a feast.
Yes,
so people can find me at inspiredmindmentalhealth.com. inspiredmindmentalhealth.com. And the first page is, hey, send me a message, say what's up. And so just feel free to reach out and say hi or have your ideas. I really believe that the thing that's going to lead us all forward is collaboration, is expanding that set of mirrors. So there's some sort of like an organized capacity that we can get this larger picture. They did this pixel art thing. I think it was Reddit that did it first, where everyone randomly created their own little drawing, and it got uploaded to this mega drawing that was happening across the planet. And this huge, big mosaic emerged with all sorts of elements that no individual designed, but this bigger picture is being told. Yes. It's so powerful when you combine our minds. And for the first time in history, we have the opportunity to tangibly do that through the internet. And so I think there's lots of opportunity to do that kind of thing to map out the solution to all of our past. Like you say with NFTs and crypto, I got a bunch of crypto. It's tanked at the moment. I'm not phased at all because it's a whole different paradigm. And I do think that right now all the seeds are planted, but no one's got the whole field. We need to each bring out different expertise and our different paradigms and perspectives to the table so that we can do this together and leave the world way more meaningful and colorful than we inherited it. So like the conversations like this, I so appreciate, Carina, and your mindset that you bring and your openness, your adventurous heart. Here you are all the way on a completely different continent. So thanks for what you're doing to contribute towards this collective evolution that we're going through at the moment.
Thank you, Josh. You too. I also agree with you. That's the only way we're going to find the solutions. We can't stand alone because we all have talents, and just together we can create something beautiful and change the world, because this is what this format is about. This is what this medium is about. It's about impacting people, even if it's one person, two people, or three people. There's a ripple effect, and then you can just change people's lives and change people's perceptions and allow people to realize that life is really unlimited. There's limitless possibilities out there, but we need to see them. Like you say, we need to change that view, change that lens, and grow together. So that's beautiful. So any closing thoughts before we leave?
Just want to say, what's up, viewers? Thank you for tuning in. It's so cool that you're bringing your minds and your hearts here. And thank you for spending time with us today. And I think you're so right, Carina, that these little impacts can have butterfly effects as they ripple out through the lives of individuals. And so you guys who are watching, your life is important, and the little decisions that you make, one day after we die, we're going to get to see all those beautiful ripple effects. And so you're a valuable piece of the puzzle. You're alive right now because you were meant to be, and you've got a part to play in this whole thing. So thanks for tuning in. Thank you, Carina, for hosting this whole platform and for just your mind and your spirit and how we're doing this. And I'm really excited. I'm stoked to be a human being. I think we're not all bad. I think there's a lot of good stuff we got going for us. And watch how things are going to materialize in the next couple of decades. It's going to be sweet. So thanks for having me here.
Right. Thank you, Josh. And you know what? I'm a Pollyanna. I believe that everyone's good. So let's just find the good and find the blessings in everything we do. Because ultimately, that just also, again, ripple effect. So be kind, smile, have fun, and let's play.
Let's play. We're already playing. I'm doing a little dance. What?
Oh, I love the shirt, by the way, Josh. That is so cool.
That's DJ Jesus in the house, spinning the tracks of your life. It's actually DJ Jesus.
That is funny.
He's got the bass, and then the bass drops from DJ Jesus, and you're like, whoa! You feel the reverberations. Thanks. Cool. I commissioned the artwork. We can make our own fashion lines. We are walking, talking billboards. Why not say something as you're cruising around?
Yes, of course. I've got the Tree of Life. Oh, you can only see some of it, right? Tree of Life on me today.
Beautiful. Yeah. You are a tree of life, is what you are, producing delicious fruits. I've got a very similar tree, and the trunk is a DNA molecule.
Oh,
I think
nice.
That we are all the tree of life.
Yes.
And providing shade for everyone else, and fruit, and places for the birds of the air to come chill in our branches.
Very cool. I love that. On that note, that is a beautiful way to end this episode. Thank you so much, Josh. It's been an honor and a privilege to have you, and hopefully we'll have you soon. Next time we'll have it with my co-host, who's not here today. He's launching his magazine, but we'll have a good conversation. Thank you so much, Josh. It's been an honor, pleasure, and we'll see you soon. Bye, everyone. See you soon.
Bye, Carina. See you soon.
Bye.